Welcome to the podcast Finding the You and Mum. I'm Christine Bagley-Jones, psychologist with 30 years experience. And today my guest is Lauren Fisher, and she is a bold and very candid mother, and she's the voice behind the podcast and platform on Instagram, Mental as a Mother. She's very honest about her journey as a single mum with two gorgeous daughters, one's 7 and one's 4. And what she will
Just
be
turned
bringing to the
5, that little monster.
just
She's
turned
5.
5.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to hear, Lauren, your story a little bit more about just the journey of motherhood for you. And I love the fact that you've created a real presence on Instagram, allowing people to understand in a more authentic fashion the ins and outs of what it's like to be a single mum. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's kick off with just the origins of you becoming a mum. Was it something that you'd long planned, or was it a little bit of a surprise?
No, well, it wasn't a surprise because I was in a same-sex relationship, so we had to be very deliberate about getting pregnant. But no, I'd spent most of my adult life saying I was never getting married and never having children. That changed for me at about 35, and then all of a sudden it just felt like an absolute biological emergency that I had to have a baby immediately. Um, I met my now ex-wife Alex when I was about 33 years old. And so within a couple of years of being in that relationship, we were both looking forward to starting a family together.
Yes, and of course that would have, I'm assuming, involved IVF and the whole shebang. And
It did,
and
yeah.
how did that go for you?
It was pretty grueling. Originally, I was a few years older than Alex, so we were each going to carry one baby, and we were using donor sperm, which we purchased via the clinic from an online database. It's very surreal reading a menu of donors and trying to get a sense of who they are. I went first because I was older. We did IUI first, which is just an insemination, and that wasn't successful. We decided then, because of my age, that we would just go straight to IVF, with the idea being that in a cycle, when you have your egg pickup, egg retrieval, that you potentially end up with multiple embryos and many chances to fall pregnant. We only ended up with one embryo. So the day that I
Wow.
went in for my transfer, we'd had four, and the embryologist walked in with our what he described as a 4AA morphologically perfect embryo. It doesn't get better than this, but the other three have deteriorated, so we've disposed of them. The pressure was on and the anxiety that obviously IVF is a big process to put yourself through physically and emotionally, but financially as well. So to think, yes, we've got this one embryo, this is the only shot, I definitely felt a lot of pressure and anxiety during that 1 to 2 week wait to find out if it had worked. But very luckily for us, it had worked.
And
Mm.
how long were you with your partner for?
We were together 11 years, and we moved out of our family home in March this year, so it's still quite new. It's only about 5 or 6 months old.
So you've got a whole lot of like a massive learning curve, I can imagine, going from a home that has two active parents to single life with the kidlets. How are you
Yeah,
finding that?
good question. There's a lot to like about it. I have two daughters. We did have a second child using my partner's egg, but after seeing me go through it the first time, she wasn't particularly keen on carrying. So we did a cycle with her eggs and made an embryo with the same donor. And then I carried her embryos. So it's called reciprocal IVF. So we've got two girls. I carried them both, but I had traumatic births with both, and that sort of just started the mental health journey for me. And then over the years, I guess, yeah, we eventually got to a place where we separated. And for me, it's both. I have a real sense of accomplishment in doing it by myself. We're 50-50. We have the kids week on, week off. We change over at school. So if I've had the children for the week and the weekend, I drop them to school on Monday morning with their school bags. And then my ex, Alex, picks them up in the afternoon. And that's how the changeover occurs. The girls, all they have to travel with is their school bag. And they've got two sets of everything at each house. Monday, when I drop them off, I'm always very emotional that day. I do walk away from feeling like I've just run a marathon, I've done it. Every drop off and pick up and lunch and snack requests and it's on the knee and all of those things. then a real sense of sadness that I'm not going to see my girls for a week. And, as a mum, I'm sure anyone listening can imagine that would feel. For me, it feels really unnatural knowing that I won't see my kids or be able to hug them for a week.
What sort of thoughts go through your mind as you're saying goodbye to them on that particular morning and you know that it's going to be that gap between cuddling them again?
Yeah, it's a mix of a little bit of release, like, okay, I get to have a break. I can go home and tidy the house and it'll stay that way. But also holding back the emotion. I don't want to make it harder for them by, falling to pieces and crying every time I say goodbye to them. So I try and keep it upbeat and tell them to have a fantastic week and you can call me anytime and I love you and all of that stuff. But as I walk away, I don't think I've walked away yet without tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
Mm.
It sounds like things are okay with your ex in that it runs as smoothly as it can run.
Yeah, it does. Nothing goes in a straight line. There are ups and downs, but yeah, we both are very clear and determined to make sure that every decision that we make is in the kids' best interest. Uncoupling after 11 years and two kids is incredibly challenging, and of course there's going to be conflict and challenges to face together, but we're very determined to make it as least traumatic for our children as we possibly can. It's very
Yourselves as
hard.
well, hopefully, because, yeah, I mean, we talk very much about wanting to spare the children any unnecessary hardship for the decisions us adults have made. But I also like to sort of invite the idea that it's good for you as well to
Mm,
make it go as smoothly as possible so that you can at least be present and enjoy the experience,
yeah.
look back and think that was just hell. It was just one big fraught experience.
Mm,
And I see that a lot with separated couples that aren't able to navigate it smoothly. It's almost like it stays bittersweet, like it stays tricky.
mm.
And I feel like we don't attend enough to the idea that you deserve to be happy during this experience and you didn't choose not to be with your partner at the onset. We don't have a crystal ball and we don't know how things are going to work out.
Yeah, this is not
What's
the I have a huge amount of guilt for the fact that they now have to go back and forth between two houses. They're still so young. And my eldest daughter, Ivy, has ADHD. She's neurodiverse, and so am I. I think, and I feel especially guilty there because I have a sense that I've given you this condition and now you're like your brain really loves routine and structure and now you're going back and forth between houses. But, to your point about the parents being able to navigate it well, it is much easier to co-parent if we are able to get along well. That's clearly what's best for the children is if we can. So particularly having a child who is neurodiverse and who does struggle to fit into a traditional classroom and she needs a lot of extra support at the moment. If Alex and I couldn't regularly communicate about that and what she needs and make sure we're giving her the same message and the same everything at both houses,
consistent?
it would be really
Mm,
difficult. I mean, even
mm.
if we are in disagreement about something or we are in a sticky patch, where it's not an option for us to not be able to get along because we that
And work this out.
to be able to communicate for our kids.
And in some ways, I'd like to think that Ivy's actually going to have the good fortune of adjusting to these challenges and interruptions to her routine and becoming victorious. Because as much as, I know, well, a lot of us, even those that aren't neurodiverse, don't love lots of interruptions and to our pattern and our routine. Humans love consistency and they love predictability and certainty. But a lot can be learnt by not having that on a platter because then you learn flexibility and resilience and being able to think different ways, even if you are a little bit staggered with the symptoms of being neurodiverse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was only diagnosed after we had her diagnosed. So I'm 44 years old and I've only just been diagnosed this year. I think you're right. For her, knowing that she is neurodiverse, we're able to do plenty of research and give her all of the support that we possibly can to help her navigate that change. She's got two loving parents, two consistent homes, and goes to a fabulous school. And she will go to that school throughout her entire education through to high school. I was an army child and went to 10 schools. We moved about every year and a half. So looking back, that was really hard, and I had no idea I had ADHD at the time. So my hope is for Ivy that even though your parents separating is a traumatic event, hopefully we'll do a good enough job of it that she still feels safe and secure and loved.
And unlike you, she's been diagnosed young
That's
and
right.
you've got everything in place and that awareness, whereas you were just a little kid that's being shunted from school to school, confused as to why this seems so much harder for you than maybe others,
Mm.
and perhaps even thinking there was something wrong with you rather than just being neurodiverse, which is perfectly fine
Yeah,
because no
absolutely.
one had the language around it.
Yeah, I very much grew up thinking, well, when you're moving so much, schools, especially interstate, curriculums are different. Idea that I was at all intelligent, I've always thought I was stupid, that I was too sensitive. They were the sort of messages that I had internalized. So I'm pretty determined not to have Ivy believe those things about herself.
And so when I think about what you've just shared, Lauren, I can visualize that in a short space of time, you've had a massive upheaval to your own identity. So you've come from being, well, firstly, pre-mum, and then you're a mum, and then you're a mum of two in a relationship, and then you're a mum of two single and separated, and now you're a single separated mother of two with ADHD. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of identity shifts there all in a decade
Less
or
than 12,
less.
well, particularly the last 12 months. But yeah, you're right. The shift into motherhood in the first place. There's also my professional life. I've had a 2 month break from work, but I'm usually in a senior leadership role in a marketing communications role for a nonprofit. I've worked in a nonprofit for the last 8 years, and marketing and comms is my specialty. So I've always been in a big job as well as a mother. So there's the other part of that too. I have just had a two
Talk to
month
me
break,
about
but
that. Mm.
normally I am a full time working mother with ADHD with a child who has additional needs. So it is a lot to carry.
What prompted the 2 month break?
I was feeling ready to move on. I'd been there a long time, 8.5 or so years. I felt like there was change coming. I felt like I was ready for a change. I was feeling really burnt out. I was having a really hard time. It was very early in my separation. Both of my kids, I could tell, needed more of me. So I took the opportunity to exit that role and deliberately gave myself space and permission to not work for a while. Luckily, I had savings that I've been able to do that. I know that's a privilege that not everyone has, but I'm just now, yesterday, I applied for a job. It's the first job I've applied for. I have to go back to work eventually, but the space, it's actually made me wonder how I ever fit in such a big job, actually, because my life is still so full with, I've also got chronic health conditions. So between managing my own health and then my girls, and then, all of processing all of the grief and emotions around the separation.
It is enormous. You were also, I was reading that just entering into the experience of motherhood was a huge jolt to your system as well, and that led you to a lot of psychological struggles. Do you mind
Yeah.
sharing a little bit more about that?
No, I'm happy to share. Before I had children, I was on no regular medication at all. I'd had really minor bouts of depression, in my 20s, which were quickly resolved with talk therapy and lifestyle changes. Don't drink too much, get exercise, things like that. I had a proper diagnosis of depression or anxiety before, but with both of my babies, I got very sick with postnatal depression when they were around 6 months old. With my first baby, it was quickly improved by going on an antidepressant medication, which I still take today. But with my second baby, Luca, she's 5 now. But with her, I had a traumatic birth. I had a massive postpartum hemorrhage and I nearly died. And then she ended up in the special care nursery, and none of it came easy for us. Breastfeeding wasn't easy. I had hyperemesis while I was pregnant, so I threw up every day. At every
You
juncture,
name
it
it.
was hard.
Yeah.
My body's just not good at being pregnant and postnatal. And with her, I knew that being a home mum, with Ivy, I'd taken 12 months off, and I thought at the end that part of my depression was to do with being at home and being isolated and feeling bored and not. So with Luca, I went back to work when I only had about 7 months off, so she was roughly 6 months old. And again, I have a job and a team to, I think I just took on too much and I totally burnt myself out. By the time she was 11 months old, I was going back to my GP saying, I just feel terrible. Like I felt like I describe it as walking through wet concrete. Everything feels so heavy. I've got all of these obligations to my team at work, to my boss, to my family, to my kids. I have no time left for me. Any task feels insurmountable. I'm not enjoying any of it. And then I feel guilty because we wanted these kids so badly. And I was just getting no enjoyment out of it whatsoever. Thankfully, I had a fabulous GP who saw that and said, I think we're at the point where you might need to go into hospital. I never knew before that there were mum and baby units in psychiatric hospitals. I was lucky to have private health insurance and a really good private mum and baby unit 20 minutes from my house.
How did you find that experience?
I was terrified at the idea of going in. No one ever thinks that they're going to have a psychiatric admission. The idea of it was really confronting. But once I got there, it was fine. And I couldn't take Luca in because she was on the verge of walking. Most of the mums in the mum and baby unit had very tiny young babies. I was the only one in there who didn't have my baby with me because she was too old. And so I found being in the mum and baby unit actually really hard. I only spent 2 or 3 nights in there because being around all of the toys and the noise and crying babies and all of that sort of stimulus
Very
just
triggering.
kept me really elevated and anxious and made me miss my kids. So I actually asked to be transferred out to the main part of the hospital, which is what I'd been afraid of because, I guess I had these ideas in my mind of who and what would be happening in a psychiatric hospital, but it was just a whole range of other, sad or anxious people like me who'd gone through some kind of shitty event that they were having a hard time dealing with. I actually ended up spending 3 weeks in there and it was fantastic. I rested, I did programs, I learned, I painted, every day that I was in there, I felt like my nervous system exhaled a little bit and I calmed down a little bit and I slept. When I was really sick at home, my biggest issue was that I couldn't sleep. No matter how exhausted I was, I could not sleep. So going into hospital and getting on some medication that ensured I got proper rest and then had nothing to do in there but be cared for. And of course, Alex was able to bring the kids in to visit me, so I still saw them regularly.
Yes.
It saved me.
I think that's just such a powerful thing to be able to share because people don't know what's behind those doors at a psychiatric facility. If we let the media and movies influence us, we can have a fairly jaded view of what to expect. But
Mm.
I've worked in psychiatric facilities during my 30-year career and I've seen all the different varieties that the facilities may offer. At the end of the day, if you're so unwell that daily life just is feeling so difficult and even just getting through each hour feels like such a burden, then it's the best place to be because you're being cared for, you're safe, you can eat, you can sleep, you can
Mhm,
shower,
mhm.
and give your whole system a chance to rest, recuperate, and
Mm.
reset so that you can be able to embrace the exciting adventure that you knew was just waiting ahead. You just had to get well.
That's right. And one of the biggest contributors to me being depressed in the first place as a mum was feeling like I look after everyone else and there's nothing left for me. So being in the hospital, being nurtured, being cared for, I didn't have to cook, I didn't have to do anything. My GP, I was really afraid of if I share how unwell I actually feel, will they take my children off me? I was really afraid of that. So I was at pains to say to my GP, like, I don't want to harm my baby and I don't want to harm myself, but I just feel so awful. And
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
just
not
so
coping.
I'm just so grateful that she said to me, Lauren, you don't have to want to harm yourself in order to accept help and you need some help at the moment. So I'm forever grateful to her and to Belmont.
That's a really wonderful story. And when you got out of hospital, did you feel like you were quite restored? Were you able to sort of enjoy some of the moments at home, even though I'm sure the tasks were still challenging?
Yeah, I definitely felt rested and refreshed, and I'd learnt a lot, and I'd had proper sleep, and I was on the right medications so that I was better able to cope at home. Obviously, you still get tired again, and motherhood is challenging forever in all kinds of different ways, but I was definitely much better able to cope at that point. I have gone back just for a few days or for a week a couple of times. I call it for like a little top up. So if I find that I get to a point where between work and motherhood and whatever, if I can't, once I can't sleep, I know I'm in trouble and I might need to have my meds adjusted. And so there have been a couple of times that I've gone back in so that my doctor could adjust my medication while I'm in hospital, safe and cared for.
And that
But
is the perfect recipe
oh,
to
it's
be
so
able to take the time out and actually get to the bottom of it instead
yeah,
of going to appointments as an outpatient at different medical practitioners, and they're just putting band-aids on, or it's a bit hit and miss. They can't actually see how the medication's working, and they
Mhm.
can't see how it's interacting with other things. So it offers that opportunity to give you the good overhaul, I guess.
That's right. I got lucky that when I was first admitted, it was under a psychiatrist that I instantly had a great rapport with. I think if I didn't like my doctor, I probably would have had a different experience, but I still see him today as an outpatient 4 years later. He just says to me, Lauren, I know you well enough that if you call and say, I need to come in for a couple of days or for the weekend or whatever, I'll admit you. If you say you need it, so just knowing that safety net is there is really, that's really helpful
It's a
for me as
relief.
well. Mm.
So, what's some pearls of wisdom or a mantra, something that's helped you stay grounded throughout all of the twists and turns of your journey so far as a mum?
Yeah, I don't have a distinct mantra, but I guess now that we're separated and that I only have my girls half the time, on the one hand, I have a huge amount of grief that I'm missing half of their childhood. When they're not here, I have to keep their bedroom doors closed and put all their toys away because I just find it so sad to see their empty rooms. But when they're with me, because I do have the weeks where I am able to rest and work and see friends and miss them, I'm really intentional about the time that I have with them, that it is that I'm very present, but also doing work that's purposeful and sharing my story on my mental as a mother Instagram and blog and all of that. All I think it's important for my girls to see that I'm mum, but I have a career and I feel like I want to do purposeful work, and that also fills my cup and allows me to give more to them as well.
How do you plan to let the girls start to see more and more aspects of you, Lauren, beyond the role of mum? Because I know when kids are young, I know I'm guilty of it too. I didn't see my parents as actual human beings with a completely separate, preferences and aspirations. I just saw their job that 100% was just being a mum.
Yeah.
So how are you revealing those different aspects to yourself?
I work as a communicator, like it's my job to tell stories. So my kids have always had a pretty good vocabulary. I talk to them like they're little people in an age appropriate way, of course, but I
Yeah.
talk to them about all sorts of things. And so my work is one of them. And explain I'm a feminist, and I've told my girls that I'm a boss at work and that I have people who work for me, which they think is really cool. And I tell them about the kind of work that I do. I always work in nonprofits. I value values and purpose driven work. And I think I've started to impart that on them. My eldest, Ivy, she's 7. I can already tell she's got that social justice fire in the belly that I have. Um, but then also telling them stories of my life before them. I've traveled and I've lived overseas and I've had incredible friendships, and just sharing the music I love or a movie that I loved as a kid, things like that, where we're able to talk about my life before they were here, but also the things that I love now, sharing, as I said, the music I love now, and then seeing them love the same music or discover music that they love. I treat them like little babies. I treat them like little people. And I do try and share, again, in an age appropriate way, all those different aspects of my life.
You are beyond mum. You mentioned just before that you're a feminist, and I love it
Mm.
when people still use that terminology. Define it for me. Help us understand when you're saying I'm a feminist, what you're like meaning exactly.
I just know that we live in a patriarchal society and that women are we're not that we don't have equality, we don't have wage equality or any of those things. It's very recent that we weren't able to vote and all sorts of things. So for me, I'm trying to raise my girls to be little feminists as well, and know that women are so powerful and strong, and we grow babies in our bodies and we do the most incredible things, and we should be absolutely revered and celebrated for that. But we're not safe in the world, and we are disadvantaged sometimes in the workplace. So I guess I could talk a lot more about it and what it means to me and how I'm trying to impart that into my girls.
And I think it's really vital because there seems to be this sort of trending of where people are stepping away from the concept of feminism. It's almost like there's an offshoot where it's not vogue. And I try to remind anybody that cares to listen, it was the feminists that gave us rights that we couldn't even imagine what our life would be like without them. But we're not talking hundreds of years, we're talking decades ago where women were even more disadvantaged and
Mm,
underrepresented in important settings and really unsafe in
absolutely.
lots of ways. And it's the feminists and the idea of feminism that's allowed us to keep having this voice. And we need to stay at the tables. And we
Oh,
can't just decide it's a trend or it's been happening enough and it's time for something new,
mm.
because the new will be a reversal rather than a progression.
I mean, even my recent ADHD diagnosis is the fact that I haven't been diagnosed until I'm 44 is, a symptom of the fact that our healthcare system is, in a patriarchal structure as well. Boys were diagnosed, girls weren't. And there's a lot of women like me who have been for a long time misdiagnosed as anxious or depressed who actually are neurodiverse. And it wasn't ever picked up. But also, I mean, like the job isn't done. Our, women's healthcare rights are, around choice to their own bodies in the States, for example, are being eroded. So, the job is never done. But I am mindful now at this age, your point about using the word feminist, I think claiming that for some people is uncomfortable because we have this picture of the angry feminist, like the screaming, man hating, and that's not that doesn't bring people along or encourage them to be curious or ask questions and understand more. So as much as I have had that fire in the belly for a long time, I have learnt that, or sitting
Yeah.
in an echo chamber of all of my best mates who are aligned and talking about it amongst ourselves and raging about it, that's not going to progress anything.
And women don't need to behave that way anyway, because that's the whole point, isn't it? We can do it differently. We can do it with compassion. We can do it with patience. And I guess the key is still continuing to have the conversation, but in a way, as you say, that's palatable.
Mm.
Otherwise, people turn off. People don't want the anger. They don't want the stereotypes. They just want to know that feminism as a concept doesn't have to come with an attitude of any particular nature. It's just around an ethos and a philosophy around equality.
I mean, women have every right to be angry. I'm not saying that we can't be, and we absolutely should scream sometimes at, the number of women who are murdered by an intimate partner in this country. But feminism also benefits men because patriarchy hurts men as well. So boys and men who feel like they aren't allowed to express emotion, that is a result of living patriarchal society. So for me, feminism is good for everyone. Yeah, I will scream about it sometimes to myself in my head or amongst my friends, but I know that if I actually want to engage in a conversation with someone and try to bring them along, yeah, screaming's not going to help as much
No
as we
one's
might
listening.
want to. Yeah.
So tell me, what is a dream or passion, Lauren, that you've long held that you've had to put on pause, but you still plan on activating at some point in your life?
I started my Mental as a Mother website and social media, sharing my story when I was in hospital for that 3 weeks when my daughter was 11 months old. So that's just over 4 years now. And the whole time I've had a dream of starting my own podcast. I haven't done it yet. But just in the last month or so, I've really, really, but an enormous, constantly. And I feel like the universe is screaming at me to do it. I've had friends check in and ask. I haven't brought it up with them, but multiple people are checking in and saying, "Hey, are you going to?" Or some of my
Mm.
followers on Instagram are messaging and saying, I relate so much to what you're saying. Can you please make a podcast? So that is a dream that I really, really want to do that. But I know myself with my ADHD, I would absolutely design the episodes and be thrilled to do the interviews and tell the story. But editing and all of the admin
Back,
side that comes with it, I'm going to
yes.
be terrible. So I need to,
That's when you outsource, Lauren.
that's
But
right.
it
But that
feels
is a
like you
dream.
absolutely, yeah, have to do it because in my mind you already had a podcast.
Yeah, you
Because
said at the start.
I know, because I was listening to and watching your Instagram with such pleasure. Some of your sharings are quite detailed. My brain just converted it to, oh, yes, it's a podcast. But yes, you're right. To make that
Well,
distinction, you've still got to create that.
here's the big reveal. There will be a Mental as Another podcast at some time. I committed to a friend a week ago that within 6 weeks, I will have made some kind of meaningful progress towards it. 5 weeks now.
Well, congratulations. And I really look forward to listening to it.
Thank you.
It'll be wonderful. So, I'm guessing you have lots of examples when I ask you this next question. Experiences as a mum where you have felt particularly lonely or lost. I can only imagine when you were suffering from postnatal depression before you were diagnosed, and then even that journey of recovery would have had many moments. But are there other occasions as well where you felt isolated and quite alone in this life?
I rarely feel lonely, but I have felt very alone. When I was on maternity leave, I felt lonely quite often because being at home with a baby, particularly my second baby, she was a COVID baby and she was only 2.4 kilos when she was born. She was tiny. So I was terrified to take her out and for her to get sick. I was at home alone a lot and I am an extrovert and I need to be around people. But I do have a sense that I am alone and the only person I can truly count on is me. And so that has some sadness attached to it for sure. That I, at the end of the day, it all the buck stops with me for everything. I'm responsible for me, and I can only rely on myself.
Why does that bring sadness rather than, say, empowerment or a sense of self containment?
I think I'm still working that out in therapy, but I guess sadness because feeling like I don't have another person that I can rely on at all, and I need help. Yeah, I have parents, I have a sister I'm really close with, I have wonderful friends, but they've all got their own lives and their own children and their own mental health journeys or careers or whatever's going on. So I do have this sense that, yeah, at the end of the day, I am ultimately alone, and that does feel sad. But I also am very proud of how resilient I am. I might feel like I'm not resilient because when I look at everything I've gone through over the last almost decade to create a family, raise my family, now going through my separation, I'm doing postgrad studies at uni and building my career and achieving amazing things in my work. I have the most incredible friendships, and that's not by luck. That's because I deserve those friendships because I surround myself with great people because I'm a good person. And
Mm.
yeah, so that does give me a sense of achievement. And I guess that's why I'm not lonely. I do have those amazing friendships that have saved me.
That sounds to me like the epitome of resilience and the fact that you have endured so many twists and turns, maybe even more than the average person if you think about it. And you have bounced back and you still continue to be inspired and set new goals for yourself. And I know the
Mm.
ADHD mind set like, you know, 20 goals of only a handful you might activate, but that's part of the beauty of it, isn't it? That you're always alive with inspiration, that you can bounce back from any kind of adversity because you know that there's always something new that you can embrace.
I think for me, part of the sadness is I just feel like I don't have a choice. So it's just not an option to lie in bed and rot and wallow for 2 weeks because I've got kids. Yeah, part of it is the resilience is just I just have to do it. When you're a mother, you have to do it. You got to put one foot in front of the other. And sometimes I just have to take it day by day or hour by hour. Because if I look too far ahead, it's easy to think, oh, I've just got to work for the next however many years to pay off the mortgage and pay the school fees as a single mum. What have I got to look forward to? But there are those things in there. I know they are in there. And that resilience, I guess, I don't always feel it. When you're having a hard time or you're feeling really down
Mm.
or feeling really guilty for something that's happened with the children, it's easy to feel like a failure or wallow for. It's important to let myself do that, I think, sometimes if I need to lie in bed for a day or 2 days, but just not for too long. Just,
And I think giving ourselves permission is such a key element of that, where we don't have to feel like we have to be game on all the time because we're parents and we're role models and we've got to be presenting with a certain personality type to show the children how to be upbeat and optimistic. And I feel like it sets them up for their own disappointments and sense of failure because it's not realistic.
mm,
In this life, suffering is unavoidable and inevitable. And in some ways, that is resilience. It's where you can see that you're in that downswing and it's going to last for a period of time, but you also know you're going to be able to claw your way out of it.
yeah, yeah, I have. And I surprise myself if I do end up down again. I call it being down in the hole when I feel really, really low. And I think, gosh, this has happened so many times now. How didn't I see this coming and prevent it? Sort of beat myself up for it. But I have climbed my way out of it every time about, how much therapy do you have before you're okay? I feel like I keep like having to repeat the year at school. You go to therapy for a couple of months and deal with an issue and think, okay, I've graduated, I'm done with therapy, but I'll probably never be done. I've been going to therapy for 20 years as needed, not always going. I'm going weekly right now because of the need to. But yeah, for me, yeah, the other day it was that, so how many years of therapy do, and like when does it get easier? And I guess the answer is that life's always going to throw up challenges, and some people do have a vulnerability to becoming more depressed or more anxious, and I'm one of them. But I also wouldn't give back that vulnerability because it comes from my sensitivity. I'm a sensitive person, and that brings me so many gifts in my ability to read a room and feel other people's energy, and my enjoyment of art and music. I feel that so intensely in my body, and I would just never give away the intense joy that that brings. And so I try and communicate that to my girls. Not so much Luca yet, she's only just 5, but certainly with Ivy, but with both of them talking about feelings. And if I yell when we're trying to get out the door in the morning to get to school on time and they're just dragging, and I'll always apologize and say, Mummy had big feelings and they're not your fault. I shouldn't have yelled, and I'm sorry. I was feeling really mad, but that isn't your fault. Or if they see me crying, yes, Mummy's really sad right now, but I'm okay, and it's not it's not you. Yeah, I'm trying to be very intentional about naming that.
Tears are fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a crier. I cry over the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm sentimental. When things are beautiful, I cry. My kids would probably say that there's hardly well, there'd definitely be not a month that goes by where they don't see me cry for some reason. But
Mm.
that then gives them permission to have the full range of feelings and not to hide them or suppress them because of what social media or society is trying to suggest right now about how we are supposed to express ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me, what's a tip? If you had to share one tip for our listeners and viewers today in terms of how to stay connected to yourself as a mum while still also remembering that you're a woman, what would that be?
I I wrote some notes that question was really important to me. My tip at the moment with the life stage that I'm at is that there are always going to be hardships and challenges, compassion, and I'm really big on um, challenging myself. If I have negative self talk, would I say this to my best friend? Extend myself the same compassion that I would anyone else. But also therapy or whatever kind of introspection or reflection or self discovery, whether that's reading books or talking to friends, podcasts, and things like that about ADHD and perimenopause and all of the factors that contribute to our emotions and our mental health. That introspection and knowing what my drivers are, what my purpose are, like who I am at my whatever form of self reflection and self discovery works for you. If you have that North Star, I think that can carry you through.
And I couldn't agree more because I feel like when we're in the day to day grind of motherhood, we
Mm.
lose that opportunity just to sit with ourselves as women, separate from all of the hats and titles that we carry with us, and just remember what matters to me. Who actually am I beyond all of this? I'm sure you've seen it many times where people have completely lost themselves
Mhm.
in the identity of being a mum or being a partner or the wheel of life.
Mm.
They haven't been checking in and figuring out what matters to me, what my values are still, because it's ever changing and you can't, it's not a set and forget. If you
No,
don't keep checking in, you wake up one day and literally be a stranger to yourself.
you're so right. And also having really strong relationships with female friends, for me, they also remind me of my worth when if I am feeling lost or I'm losing sight of myself. But um, I've always found it interesting the number of times in my life I've filled out that DAS questionnaire, the
Yeah.
depression and anxiety scale, to find
Same.
out how depressed and anxious I am at the time. And I know when I'm filling it out that, yeah, I'm depressed and I'm anxious. I can tell. But there's one question in there about I feel like I'm worthless. And I don't feel worthless, no matter how depressed or low I've been or how much I've been struggling. I have never ever said that I feel worthless. I've never felt that way. I know I have
Why do you
worth.
think that is, Lauren? Why do you think you don't ever, because that's on that list for a reason, because a
Mm.
lot of people struggle with that sense of failure and unlovability and feeling worthless. How did you dodge that bullet, do you think?
I'm not sure because I do feel, when I'm really low, I have felt like a burden or I have felt like I'm broken, mentally a little bit broken, and I'm always going to be a bit fragile and delicate, but or vulnerable. But I'm not worthless. I know that I'm a good person. I know that I have empathy. I know that I'm a really good friend. I'm trying my absolute best to be a really good mum. Yeah, I'm a
Yep.
good sister. I just know that I'm a good person. I have value to offer the world. So I don't feel worthless. Even if I feel really dark and sad and alone, I still know I have value.
And that would be your saving grace, I'm sure, in many a dark hour, knowing
Mm.
that even when it feels like all else is lost, I'm still someone of worth. I'm valuable. I belong in
I
the
have
role
something to
on this.
offer. I'm good at these things. I am this mother to these little girls, and that's so important to me. Getting that as right as I can. I know I've done a lot of work in therapy about just being a good enough mother, but yeah, I'm really trying my absolute best, and it feels like a privilege to. Part of me feels like I'm remothering that little child in me that might have needed something that at the time wasn't how things were done in parenting. So for me, that feels like a real
So true.
blessing, remothering myself as I mother them.
It's how we heal a lot of our broken bits, isn't
Mm.
it? Through being able to do differently for our offspring and also just realize how hard it is to be a parent. And
Oh,
sometimes when we weren't given the care or the nurturing we probably thought we were supposed to be getting, there's a little bit more understanding, perhaps, why we weren't getting it.
Oh, I have so much more compassion for my parents and particularly my mother since becoming a mum. So she was 19 when she got married, 9 months pregnant with me on her 21st birthday. I'm the oldest of three girls. When she was 27, she had three kids and she was an army wife living in Albury Wodonga. Social media, no GPS in the car, no anything. And I think if I've found it this hard, with all of the additional life experience and all the skills I've acquired through
Your
work and
support.
all of the supports I have around and all of the online connection. And if I find it so hard, my God, how lonely must she have been and how hard must it have been for her? So, yes, it's completely reframed for me how, yeah, I just have so much compassion.
And that is healing in itself. Define for me, tell me what the term finding the you in mum means for you specifically, Lauren.
Okay, for me, it is as well as that constant self reflection and that introspection, always learning about myself and trying to better myself. Friendships, I cannot say, I can't, particularly in the last year, my friendships with incredibly brilliant, talented, wonderful women have saved my life. Those people who can your shit if you're being a bit of a brat or correct you if you're talking not very nicely to yourself and hold up a mirror and show you're doing pretty well if you think about it. And then the other thing I would say is I'm a creative person, so for me sharing stories, self-expression, clothes, hair, makeup, we can really feel like we lose our identity, particularly immediately after having a baby. With both of my babies, I had to go and get an entirely new makeup palette and wardrobe after I had each one because I just felt like I'm not who I was before. That I need I'm different and I
For an
need
upgrade.
yeah. So yeah, I think that self-expression, how I identify myself and put myself out in the world, sharing stories and connection with friendships. That is how I focus on me.
That is a very good tip for I hope that lots of people are able to relate to. We don't want to just scoot along this whole life as mother without realizing that there's so much cherishable stuff that we can do creatively and the way we connect with others that can live parallel to all of the duties and responsibilities and experience of being a mother.
Mothering, it actually contributes
Yeah.
to the mother that you are, so your children still benefit, if not directly.
And they love it. They love watching everything that I've observed. Kids love watching their mothers thrive.
Mm.
They love seeing them do well and be something more than just the person that provides for them. So, yeah, I agree very much with you, Lauren. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I
Oh,
really valued all of your insights and your honest sharing, so I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it as well.